Have you ever heard of covert narcissism? This is a term that might sound unfamiliar, but its effects are far-reaching and can be deeply impactful. Covert narcissism is a less obvious form of narcissism, often hidden behind a facade of humility. It's a more subtle, insidious form of self-centeredness that often goes unnoticed, making it all the more dangerous. In the realm of psychology, narcissism is generally understood as an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. Yet when we think of narcissists, we often imagine individuals who are overtly grandiose, attention-seeking, and openly dismissive of others. However, not all narcissists fit this stereotype. Some, known as covert narcissists, present a different, less conspicuous face to the world. Unlike their overt counterparts, covert narcissists don't wear their self-centeredness on their sleeves. Instead, they hide it, often behind a mask of modesty or even self-deprecation. They might seem shy, introverted, or overly sensitive, making it difficult to identify their narcissism at first glance. But beneath the surface, they harbor the same excessive self-focus, lack of empathy, and craving for admiration that characterizes all forms of narcissism. What makes covert narcissism so insidious is this very subtlety. Because it's not as blatant or recognizable, it can be easy to overlook or dismiss. But make no mistake, the impacts of this form of narcissism can be just as damaging as those of more overt forms. It can lead to manipulative behaviors, emotional abuse, and unhealthy relationships, causing significant harm to those who interact closely with a covert narcissist. As we delve deeper into this topic, we'll explore the origins, development, and onset of covert narcissism. We'll shed light on how it forms, how it manifests, and how it impacts those who come into contact with it. By understanding it better, we can be better equipped to recognize and respond to it. Covert narcissism is not as blatant as overt narcissism, but it is just as damaging. So, where does covert narcissism come from? To truly understand the roots of this complex personality disorder, we delve into the realms of genetics and environment, a blend of nature and nurture. There's no singular cause that can be pinpointed, but rather, a mixture of factors that contribute to its development. On the genetic front, research indicates a propensity for narcissism can indeed be passed down through generations. Just as we inherit physical traits like the color of our eyes or the shape of our noses, our psychological makeup can also bear the imprints of our biological heritage. This doesn't mean that if you have a narcissistic parent, you're destined to be one. Genetics merely lay the groundwork, predisposing an individual to certain traits. It's the environmental factors that trigger and shape these characteristics. Speaking of environment, let's turn our attention to childhood, a critical period in our lives where our personalities start to form. Covert narcissism is often linked to early life experiences marked by neglect, abuse, or poor parenting. A child who is excessively pampered or conversely excessively criticized can develop a distorted sense of self. If a child's emotional needs aren't met, they may retreat into themselves, fostering a covert narcissistic personality as a defense mechanism. In some cases, a child may be raised by parents who are themselves narcissistic, setting a model for self-centered behavior. The child learns to value themselves based on external validation, creating a fragile self-esteem that's heavily dependent on how others perceive them. This leads to the covert narcissist's characteristic pattern of seeking attention and affirmation, yet being hypersensitive to criticism. It's important to stress that these are general patterns and not absolutes. Not every child who experiences these conditions will develop covert narcissism. It's a complex interplay of many factors, including individual resilience and other environmental influences. Covert narcissism, like many personality disorders, likely arises from a complex interplay of genetics and environment. Every person's journey with this condition is unique, colored by their individual experiences and genetic predispositions. How does covert narcissism develop? This is a question that has intrigued many, and today we will dive into this complex matter. Covert narcissism, like many personality disorders, doesn't just appear overnight. It's a gradual process, often rooted in early life experiences and developing over time. It's like a seed planted in the fertile soil of a child's psyche, and with the right conditions, it slowly sprouts and grows. A common factor that contributes to the development of covert narcissism is a pattern of grandiosity. This is not the overt, bragging grandiosity that we typically associate with narcissism. Instead, it's a subtle internal sense of superiority. The individual harbors a belief that they are unique, special, and better than others, even if they don't openly express it. This grandiosity is a defense mechanism, a shield against feelings of inadequacy and worthlessness. Alongside this grandiosity, there's a deep-seated need for admiration. Covert narcissists crave validation and recognition, but they often struggle to obtain it. They may feel misunderstood, overlooked, or underappreciated. This unmet need for admiration can fuel their inner sense of superiority, reinforcing their covert narcissistic tendencies. Lastly, a defining feature of covert narcissism is a lack of empathy. Covert narcissists struggle to truly understand and share the feelings of others. They may appear empathetic on the surface, but it's often a means to an end, a way to maintain their own self-image or to manipulate others. This lack of genuine empathy is a critical factor in the development and maintenance of covert narcissism. What we must remember is that covert narcissism is not a choice, but a product of various factors and circumstances. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture, genetics and environment, personality and experience. Covert narcissism develops over time, often becoming more noticeable as the individual reaches adulthood. And as we continue to explore this intriguing topic, we'll delve into when these traits typically begin to emerge and how they can impact a person's life. At what age does covert narcissism start? This is a question that many people ask, and the answer is not as straightforward as you might think. Covert narcissism, like many personality disorders, doesn't have a specific age of onset. It's not like a light switch that suddenly flips on when you reach a certain birthday. Rather, it's a gradual process that typically begins to manifest in late adolescence or early adulthood. Why this period of life, you might ask? Well, adolescence is a time of significant change, both physically and mentally. It's a time when individuals begin to form their identity, their sense of self. For some, this process gets tangled up with feelings of insecurity and inadequacy, leading to the development of narcissistic tendencies as a defense mechanism. Early adulthood is another critical phase. It's a time when people start to face the realities of life, with all its challenges and disappointments. It's a period of establishing independence, navigating relationships, and building a career. For some people, this can be an extremely stressful time, and those with a predisposition for narcissism may begin to show signs of the covert type as they struggle to maintain their self-esteem. Now, it's important to remember that just because someone exhibits narcissistic traits during these stages, it doesn't necessarily mean they will develop covert narcissism. It's a complex disorder that involves a range of factors, including genetics, environment, and personal experiences. But here's the crucial point. Early intervention is key. If you or someone you know is showing signs of covert narcissism, seeking professional help as soon as possible can make a world of difference. Therapists and psychologists can provide strategies and tools to manage the disorder, helping to prevent it from escalating and causing significant distress in a person's life. So while covert narcissism can start at any age, it usually begins in late adolescence or early adulthood. And remember, the earlier the intervention, the better the chance for managing covert narcissism. Let's sum up what we've learned about covert narcissism. It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? It's a less obvious form of narcissism, often going unnoticed until the damage is done. This subtle nature is what sets it apart from its more overt counterpart. It's like a silent storm, brewing quietly until it unleashes its fury, often catching everyone off guard. We've delved into the origins of this complex personality disorder, understanding that it's not a product of choice or will. Rather, it's a combination of genetic predisposition and environmental factors. Like many psychological conditions, it's an intricate interplay of nature and nurture. We've also traced the development of covert narcissism over time. It's not a sudden transformation, but a gradual process, often so slow that it's almost imperceptible. It's like watching a seed grow into a tree. You don't notice the changes day by day, but over time the transformation is undeniable. The age of onset is another crucial aspect we've discussed. Covert narcissism usually begins in late adolescence or early adulthood. It's during this formative phase of life, when the personality is still malleable and developing, that the seeds of covert narcissism are sown. It's a critical period, and the experiences during this time can have a profound impact on the individual's personality. It's essential to remember that covert narcissism, like any other psychological disorder, is not a character flaw or a personal failure. It's a condition that requires understanding, compassion, and professional help. The first step towards dealing with it is recognizing its presence and understanding its nature, and that's where we come in. By sharing knowledge and insights about this complex condition, we're equipping ourselves with the tools to identify and deal with it effectively. Knowledge is power, and understanding covert narcissism empowers us to navigate the complexities of human psychology with more grace and understanding. Remember, understanding covert narcissism is the first step in dealing with it effectively. So let's keep learning, keep evolving, and keep striving for a world where mental health is understood, not stigmatized.